What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of JaAR. JaAR, for those of you that may be new, stands for Joe
and Amy
Review. This is our no longer weekly show where we review the magic stories. And this week we're not reviewing a specific story. In fact, I struggled whether to call this a JaAR at all, but it is technically Joe and Amy reviewing the magic story. It's just kind of the magic story as a whole. This week was supposed to be us talking about the problem, or a problem, that we have been having with War of the Spark Forsaken. And we were going to talk about that, and then we were going to move on and next week do War of the Spark Forsaken Part 1.
Right.
Couple of changes there. First of all, next week we're going to be doing our year-end wrap-up instead, to let you all know what's going on this channel, how we've been doing as a brand of Geek for All, and what we have coming up in the future. So it'll be a lot nicer. First of all, happy holidays to one and all. Hopefully you are enjoying this holiday season. If you live in an area where it is cold, hopefully you are staying warm and safe and comfortable. But yeah, this is, like I said, this was supposed to be an episode talking about one major glaring problem. And that was what it was going to be up until like 4 days ago. And now it's going to be a little bit of a discussion of Magic Story as a whole. And I'll stop being cryptic about it. This time of year has been for us, at least for the past 2 or 3 years, has been where we would do our top 10 Magic Stories of the Year video. I really enjoy those videos.
Yeah, me too.
It gives us a chance to go back and look at all the great stories from the year.
Yeah.
Sometimes we would come across some not so great ones, and they would go into like a bottom 3, or I think one year we just had the worst, like the bottom 1. This year,
like the only one that wasn't good.
Right. And this year we found that it wasn't appropriate to do that.
Right.
Why? Well, not because all of the stories this year were crap, although at my initial look through of it, that's kind of how I felt. I was like, oh, we can't do that. All these stories sucked. But they didn't.
Right.
We still had the tail end of Nikki Drayden's Ravnica Allegiance stories. We had all of The Gathering Storm by Django Wexler, which was fantastic. We had good stories this year. But we also didn't have great stories this year.
Right.
And it didn't have to do with the lack of good ones to count on the list. It had to do with the lack of quantity. We wouldn't have been able to do a top 10 because there were barely 10 to go over.
Right.
Because it would be very simple to say, oh, well, there were 20 chapters of The Gathering Storm, but then it's just top 10 chapters of The Gathering Storm.
Right.
And one, that's boring as hell.
Right.
And two, that's not really fair to Django Wexler as the writer or to the story as a whole. To be like, oh, this one chapter was better. Who cares? It helped contribute to telling... Right. Even the bad chapters, quote unquote, still helped to tell the whole story, which we overall really enjoyed.
Right.
So we're not here to do a top 5 or a top 10 or a bottom 1 or whatever. We're just not. And again, originally we were just here to talk about War of the Spark, but, and I'll shout out Carrie, or at Vronos on Twitter. They put out an article today, maybe 2 days ago. When this video comes out, I believe it'll be a day or two prior to when the video came out. And talking about the Magic Story, and it's funny because a lot of the things that we were then going to talk about following the announcement of a few days ago was what Carrie mentioned in their article. So first of all, I highly encourage you to go check out that article. Hashtag not sponsored, but we still really enjoyed it. We read it, I read it to Amy shortly before we came out here, and I had seen it earlier in the day. And I think Carrie did an amazing job of kind of summarizing the unfortunate aspects of the story from not just the past year, but the kind of the past 2 years, starting in 2018. So this discussion comes on the heels of the announcement from Wizards of the Coast that there will not be an ebook for Theros Beyond Death. And not only will there not be an ebook, but there will also not be web fiction for Theros Beyond Death. Which means that besides a hard novel, like, you know, a hardcover or softcover actual book, like War of the Spark Ravnica and War of the Spark Ravnica Forsaken were and are. There's, unless that's what they're doing, no method of magic storytelling that we are currently familiar with as an option is going to be utilized to tell the Theros Beyond Death stories. Now, what the article said when they released that article and made that announcement was that the story would be told through the cards and that we should tune back into that article or that page on the mothership, if you will, on magic.wizards.com. Again, not sponsored, because God knows when we start talking about this thing, that it will not be something that they would want to sponsor us for.
Oh boy.
I mean, again, we're not going to be, slandering people or anything. We're giving our opinion. We're just not very fond of it, so I'm sure that's not what they would want as their corporate message about things.
Well, who knows? Maybe that's just how bad their marketing team is.
Oh, well. Or if one exists at all.
If one exists at all.
Because it seems like a lot of this stuff is being farmed out to third parties to announce for them, and then they just retweet that announcement and go, ooh, look, and you're supposed to look over there and not focus on the fact that they're not doing anything except throwing money at people to do this stuff for them. And it's has not been done optimally in our opinions recently. Again, take those opinions for what you will, who are we, but except for loyal fans who have been enjoying this stuff for years and don't necessarily see where this is going and have been talking about this for a while. And it's been, as Carrie mentioned, and like I said, I'm going to keep referencing back to that article. I highly encourage you to even just pause this video and go read it. It was a very quick read, and I think Carrie did an amazing job with it. But, and again, not sponsored. We weren't asked to do this. It's just, it was a good piece of content that we enjoyed, and a lot of points that were made were very apropos. So, I feel like, somewhere deep down inside, I feel like there's going to be an announcement coming soon, and who knows, maybe it came out the day this video was released and we look like idiots here, talking about it like this. But there might just be an announcement where they're like, we said it was going to be in the cards, but it's also going to be this new thing. Aren't you surprised? And it really feels like Wizards is trying to do that we know something you don't know thing.
Yeah.
And that's good when it's a product release. Like when they did Secret Lair and they had those like weird videos that made no goddamn sense, and they're like showing a train outside or whatever, and it's like glitchy video, and then like or random explosions, and that's supposed to show the like goblin explosion ears thing that they did. That's fine. That's one thing, and that's something that is not something that was anticipated. That was a surprise release, and they did little quirky videos for it, and it was very artistic and cool.
Okay.
Good for you. Congratulations. That was a job well done, and credit where credit is due. The problem is, you have a lot of people anticipating the story in general, as well as what I'll kick over to Amy to talk about, because it was something that you were very passionate about when we were discussing this yesterday. Not that I'm not. But this Theros story in particular being something that people have been waiting for.
Right. And
that you're just like, oh, by the way, no stories, just, check in with the story being told in the cards.
Right.
So why?
This is the return of Elspeth. I mean, this is the main story beat that everyone has been waiting for. I mean, Ravnica, people kind of cared about. Dominaria, people really cared about. And now Elspeth. Elspeth. You're just gonna not do a story for Elspeth.
And again, I will say,
What?
It's not necessarily that they're not doing a story. Because as of now, they're being super shady about, like, well, we're not doing an ebook and we're not doing web fiction. Check back in with this article because we're telling the story through the cards. Okay. Does that mean that's the only way that they're telling the story? That is not what they said.
Who knows?
Right. But again, that's my take on it, because it seems like they're doing the na-na-na-na-na-na, like we know it and you don't and you have to wait. But again, for Secret Lair, that makes sense. For this, it really doesn't. And for the people who know what's going to happen to be sitting back there, steepling their fingers and being super proud of themselves that everybody's upset. Well, that doesn't make sense.
No.
Because when people are upset, what are they going to do? They're going to detract themselves from their interest in your product.
Right.
It's not about you dangling something over our heads and then taking it away only to reveal something bigger and better underneath so that we go, oh, thank God. No. Because if that were the thing that you did as the first change that you made to these stories, we're not doing web fiction anymore. Sorry, everybody. And everybody goes, oh my God, they're not doing web fiction anymore. What the hell's happening? And then they go, but it's this thing. And it's so much better or really cool or at least comparable.
Right.
Right? Then okay, you got us. Congratulations.
Yeah.
But something that...
But at change number 15 million, people don't care anymore.
And something
they just don't want to hear about it.
Yeah.
They've gotten to a point where, yep, Wizards is changing things again.
It's not even yep, Wizards is changing things again. It's really not. I would respectfully disagree. I think it's more of I'm done.
Yeah.
And again, that's not me personally saying that. We're still sitting here trucking through for however long we can physically do it. But I've seen many hardcore Vorthos who've been doing it for years just turn around and be like, I'm done. What?
Can't do this anymore.
Because it's a waste. It's a waste of everyone's time, and it's a waste of their energy and their hope. People use these stories as an escape.
Right.
And you're turning it into something extremely stressful.
Right.
Because people have to read through War of the Spark Forsaken and be queer-baited and have their characters mischaracterized and have their stories retconned for seemingly no other reason than negative reasons that they're thinking of.
Right.
And the big thing that we're going to talk about towards the end that I'd rather save for the end so that some people will be able to watch all of this video but that, and then they can leave prior to that happening because I don't want to do that to everyone. It's just frustrating and it's stressful. And I don't blame a single person who is looking at this all going, you know what? I just wanted to read some cool stories. I'm out. Tag me out. That's it. Or I'm tapping out or whatever. I don't blame you at all. I would hate to see more Vorthos go, but it's not your fault. It's not my fault that this happened. So I can't blame you if you go, because I wouldn't wish this tumultuousness or this uncertainty on my worst enemy. It's not cool for something that people have devoted so much time and energy and respect and love to. And to see the Doug Byers, the Allison Lorses, the Michael Yi Chows of the world responding to the War of the Spark Forsaken debacle and basically being like, sorry guys, there was nothing we could do, and we're as upset about it as you are. And then some of them having to delete those opinions and statements because they still work for the company. Or, sorry. I don't know that is why they deleted those statements. But those statements were made and then taken away.
Right.
I speculate that it is because they still work for the company. I don't want to put...
Or if they don't still work for the company, they were told to shut their mouths.
Right. The specific instance I'm referring to is with someone who does still work for the company. And again, I'm not here to disparage those people because they are great and we love them. And I'm not trying to stir up any nonsense. So I also don't want to mischaracterize things that occurred. All I know is something existed. It spoke about their passion and their feelings of being upset by what happened. And then that no longer existed. And was no longer findable. And so... that is how that reaction occurred to us. Why it happened, again, I made a statement and that's my guess, but if I'm incorrect, please understand that that's not me definitively saying that's what happened, because that's not fair. But it's upsetting. It's upsetting that these people who have done these things are now, they feel and seem so powerless and heartbroken, where especially if you still work for the company, that means that one of your peers, one of your coworkers, is the one who's in charge of this, and they're not coming to you to discuss. I would do that in a heartbeat, as long as that person were still amenable to that, right? I'm not going to go bother them and be like, I know you don't do this anymore, but tell me what to do, right? Because then you're just doubling the work for them. But this is something that these people were passionate about doing. And something that Carrie also touched on, and I'll expand on, is that, and this is something that will tie us into our later, our secondary discussion, which was supposed to be our primary discussion, is that there used to be names and faces with these stories that you could contact and ask questions. And that's because those questions, at that time, the questions were typically like, why did you make that character decision? Why did this person say this? What was your inspiration for making that plane themed behind India, right? Like what did you draw from? What did you learn about? who did you talk to? Those kinds of questions. Flavor-based questions that expanded on the lore.
Right.
Now the questions are, why are you doing what you're doing? But it's not, please tell me I want to know more. It's,
right.
Please tell me we'd like to know anything at all.
Right.
And again, speculation on my part, but that maybe is why they don't have a forward-facing individual who is there to answer those questions. Because anyone that you talk to who has a named Twitter account related to Wizards of the Coast, if you talk to them about story, either completely ignores you or references you to Wizards at Wizards Magic, I think it is, something like that. Like the main Twitter account that gets any and all comments from everyone regarding the game, the card stock, the new releases, the story, and anything else that's going on. And so they're inundated with things and responses and whatever, and they're also like handcuffed from immediately responding because the people behind that Twitter account are tweeting as the brand, which means that they need to respond as the brand would like them to respond. Hence why it took the response to War of the Spark Forsaken, the super cookie cutter corporate response, took like over a week. I could be wrong on that exact number of the amount of time.
I mean, that's not why.
But the silence was deafening, if you will. Like, it really was.
That's honestly, that's not why. They
Okay.
had to speak to their PR team and their lawyer before they could make a statement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then they didn't respond at all to the, I will be kind, because I don't have facts enough. I have screenshots, or I've seen screenshots. I don't have screenshots. I've seen screenshots, but in this day and age, I'm not going to blanketly believe a screenshot on the internet.
Okay.
But they have not responded to the allegation or to the accusation and or the fact, again, I'm not sure if it is, but it could be, that apology statement was not visible to for certain foreign markets that might be displeased by the assertion that Chandra isn't straight. Don't worry, everybody. We were kidding, I guess.
Right.
And again, go to Carrie's article if you want more specifics. I believe Carrie seems to make a more definitive statement that I'm not as comfortable making, and again shows evidence that they have found on that. So please feel free to go do that as well. And that kind of leads it to the genuinely, for me, unless you have anything else before we get on to the main topic.
I don't know.
Because there's a lot. I won't lie to you, and obviously for you to sum up everything now, like, but was there any like major point that you wanted to?
I mean, it's just the same stuff we've said all along.
Yeah, check our other videos on this. We've had lots of them, unfortunately.
Yeah, sadly.
We've talked about...
And that's the thing, right? That's what sucks about it all. We're trying to make videos every week reviewing the stories, and most of the videos just became us complaining.
Right.
Or responding to other people complaining.
Right.
And nobody, that's not a positive video to come home from work and sit down and watch.
Or to sit down and film.
Yeah, right.
To be honest, it's the same idea.
So, for us it's hard. For other creators, I'm sure it's very hard.
It's definitely, I've heard
for the
from
audience,
them,
it's hard.
Yeah.
And not just the audience of the game and the stories, but also the audiences of the creators.
Yeah.
Because, I'm sure they feel a kinship with the fact that they feel the same way about it as we do, but they don't necessarily want to listen to us talk about it every week.
Well, listen to us talk about it every week. Listen to all creators talk about it constantly, because...
And the thing is, what else are we supposed to do?
It's true. Well, because that's the topic of conversation at the time, right? This announcement came out about the Theros Beyond Death stories, and I'm 100% with you, Amy, that what are you supposed to do? Like, this is okay. Here's the main point that I wanted to make on this. And Carrie mentioned it, and I want to just take it and run with it and expand on it. This started with Dominaria.
Yeah.
In my opinion, this started with Dominaria. Ixalan had just ended. You get your first new writer in Martha Wells, and my take on it, she wasn't properly prepped with the material to know the characters for one of two reasons. One, it wasn't fully what they wanted her to do. Like, they only wanted her to focus on specific things, so they only gave her specific things. Or two, this is what I think it is that it's just so much information.
Yeah,
that
Dominaria was not the story that you wanted to be the first experimental farming out of the stories situation.
And there are other members of the Vorthos community, I would argue pillars of the Vorthos community, who I'm not going to name because I don't want to misquote, because it has been so long since Dominaria as a whole was a thing. But there were members of the Vorthos community who said at that time, listen everybody, this is a transitionary period for Wizards. They're moving into outside authors instead of in-house authors. Let them experiment. The experiment didn't work super well with Dominaria, but give them a chance. Okay, that's a fair statement. It sucks that Dominaria was what had to take the hit, one of your most popular, populous, if you will, in terms of sets on it, planes.
Right.
But fine. You know what? You needed a transitionary period. Maybe you used Dominaria because it has such a rich history that you could come back to it in the future once you've gotten your legs underneath you steadily, and you can fix it because there's so much to draw from that even though you screwed up the return of the Weatherlight, the killing of Liliana's last demon, etc., at least you could save it in some way.
Right. You could revisit it and take it to a better place.
And instead, almost every set after that was ruined as well.
And not just ruined as well, but ruined almost worse.
Right. Well, and in different ways each time. So I guess arguably you could still give the argument or the excuse that they were learning from their mistakes.
Right.
Right? They made a mistake with Dominaria, they fixed it with whatever came after Dominaria. And then they made a mistake there, and they fixed it with whatever came after that. But then they made another mistake and another mistake. Like, look at Guilds of Ravnica and Ravnica Allegiance. The Nikki Drayden stories were great.
Right.
They were very cool. They were a great way to see the plane of Dominaria and see random individuals who belonged to the different guilds interacting with other guild people.
Ravnica.
Right. Sorry, yes. What'd I say?
Dominaria.
Yeah, sorry. Ravnica. I know it. I just had Dominaria on the brain.
Yeah.
But yes, you had different guild members reacting or interacting with the rest of the Ravnican people, guildless or other guilds or their own guilds, what have you. And that was super interesting, and Nikki Drayden's a great writer, and congratulations to her, because she did a great job, and I hope that she gained more fans from that.
Right.
The problem is, and I believe this was something that Carrie pointed out as well, it had nothing to do with the main story.
Right.
Literal nothing, except for the one that talked a little bit about Veraska. The one of the 10 that mentioned Veraska a little bit, and then you got like a little bit of Lazov in one of them, but that had nothing to do with Lazov's then later presence in the actual timeline of stories. It just was then a character that we were going to likely see later, as opposed to these individual throwaway characters who,
Right.
if we never hear from them again, that's fine because they did their job for those particular stories.
But they were great.
Yes, agreed. It was super entertaining and it was a nice escape. What a magic story should be.
And that's honestly kind of what sucks. Because we were able to get those good stories from Ricky Drayton with like tertiary characters. And then when it came back to characters that we know and love and already care about, they were just being dragged and dragged and dragged through the manure.
Yeah. And I will also say, right, War of the Spark Ravnica, this one over here, not super well received. We gave it, I would argue, a better review than most.
Yeah. We tried.
But right, and I think we went a little bit more negative than we would have liked to, but at the same time, there were negatives, and we touched on those. We just may have lingered on them a little bit longer than we would have wanted to because our argument was that novel was supposed to be, seemed like it was supposed to be, from our perspective, for new readers. And by new readers, I mean, because you correct me on this often properly, readers who are new to the magic story, not readers who are new to reading.
Right.
Readers who are new to the magic story in general. And because of that, you had a lot of backstory, you had a lot of exposition, and you had not a lot of character development.
Right.
Outside of the Teos and Rats of the world, where Greg Weisman was able to take some liberties because he was the one who wrote those characters. He had some parameters, but it wasn't Jace. It wasn't years and years and years and years of backstory and characterization that you now have to internalize and then spit back out onto a page when the guy's got maybe 5 chapters that are devoted to him.
Right.
In the entirety of the novel.
Right. So, we weren't sitting there and saying, well, this guy sucks and what the heck. We were sitting there saying, okay, you got to look at it from the perspective of he was, handed this difficult project that, he tried to make the best out of.
Yeah. And it's a lot more than a difficult project. This was the story to culminate however many years of your backstory. And even more beyond that, because in that story you had planeswalkers like Teferi, Karn, and Jaya, who existed well before the magic origins of the world that started the main focus on the Gatewatch 5. And I would argue that, Magic Origins is really the main focal point. Magic Origins Forward is the main focal point for that War of the Spark end story. But you also had Nicol Bolas from Shards of Alara, from all the way back to Legends. Ajani and Nicol Bolas fighting one another, or their history with one another, going all the way back to there. There was a lot of history behind these characters and their conflict, and then it ended the way it did. And it retconned a lot of the work that those devoted authors that I mentioned,
who wrote actual good stories. And when I say good, I mean so good. Very,
very good. And honestly, they're not novelists, to my knowledge. Right? They're writers, but to my knowledge, they're not novelists. And if I'm incorrect, I would love to be corrected. I would love to be pointed towards any and all novels that were written by these people, because I'd love that. Please leave it in the comments.
Maybe we'll do jars on those then, right?
I'd be okay with that. But these were in-house writers. Now, I am and I'm not one of those people on the internet, on Twitter specifically, or Reddit or whatever, or Facebook, or wherever these angry comments are coming to Wizards, where they're going to say, bring back the in-house writing team. Sure, that would be awesome, don't get me wrong, but there's no way it's happening. how many in-house writers did they have back in the day? I can think of 5 to 10 off the top of my head.
But that number dwindled and dwindled and dwindled and dwindled.
On purpose. It dwindled and dwindled for a couple of different reasons. Either there were firings or people moving on. And again, speculation, but those people who moved on may have moved on because they saw the writing on the wall as the rest of their colleagues were getting the boot over and over and over again, some of whom had a lot quieter exits than others.
Right.
Because they weren't necessarily forward-facing names. You saw them in a byline on the story, but you didn't really hear from them online often. Or you didn't hear them talked about or seeing them interacting with their coworkers online as much as others.
Right.
And so those people, when they left, we heard about it way later. And that's us not swearing to know all the back channels and where to look to find that information or whatever, but we hear after the fact, like, oh yeah, so-and-so's gone. You're like, that person's gone too?
Right.
Like, when did that happen? Well, it happened quietly because they don't want you to know that they're firing these people because you, God forbid, might want to tell them that they shouldn't be doing that.
Right.
But as I've stated before, and it sucks because this used to be a fine excuse in my eyes for why the company was doing what they were doing, is because they're a company and they have to make money. And so it's cruddy, to be polite. It's very cruddy and bad. But the first thing that comes to my head is that's 5 to 10 people that you have to pay full-time salary and benefits.
Right.
And my bias may be showing, but the trend seems to be, to me, that companies would rather not do that these days because, good God, that's expensive.
Yeah.
And you should do that. Again, my opinion, my bias. But Wizards, at least in that case, seems to have not wanted to do that. And again, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was a completely different reason. Well, again, the other reason that was brought up to us, to our faces, in the Future of the Magic Story weekly MTG video that they put out, which was awful, and we reviewed, and it was awful for many reasons, but something that they mentioned, again, right to our faces, was that they don't think that there are enough Vorthos out there, and that they're not buying enough product. And that is...
They can't make enough money off of us if they're writing free stories for us to read.
Yep.
And we're not going to our, local game store and purchasing, multiple boxes and fat packs and whatever else.
And mythic editions off of their own website, and secret layers off of their own website, and all those other things. And again,
because we're too interested in the story.
And we're not experts on the sealed product. There are many other...
YouTubers.
Much more, well, I would say creators in general, because articles have been written about it, podcasts, things like that. So I love YouTube, but I wouldn't just limit it to YouTube.
Right.
But yes, there are very prominent content creators out there who have done much more in-depth discussions on this, and there's a lot of kind of rampant speculation going around about the history of, or I should say the future, not the history, the future of sealed magic products, sealed magic product being given to LGSs, or sold obviously to LGSs, to sell to people as opposed to Wizards doing it themselves. There's a lot going on there, and I encourage you to look it up if that's something that interests you. We are not the place to come for that, because we're here to review the story. But just realize that it seems like these past 2 years have been a transitionary period, and the phrase, something fatigue, product fatigue, is that the term?
Yeah.
That's a real thing. And at least for me, I'm 100% feeling it.
Yeah.
Between collector's boosters and theme boosters and planeswalker decks, and if you want to complete a set, you used to be able to just buy the set, buy a box or buy some packs or buy singles, buy a bundle or a fat pack, get the book, you'd see every card listed out right there. You go on Gatherer, every card's listed right there. And you can just make a list. Oh, I have this one, I don't have this one, I have this one, I don't have this one. But there are The number varies depending on who you ask, but there are between 4 to 6 of rares and mythics out of Throne of Eldraine and Theros Beyond Death at this point. Of each one. Because you could have a regular pack foil, or a pack rare, or a mythic, a pack foil rare or mythic. You can have extended art foil. You could have like a showcase version maybe of it or something. You can have a pre-release stamped promo of it, which is automatically foil. There's so many different options. So if you want to complete the set, well, now what do you have to do? It's so much more difficult. And again, that's product fatigue. And so again, I said I'm not an expert on sealed product, but it's product fatigue more so than anything else. And it sucks because they're building up all this sealed product and in return just stamping out the story in the process, it seems. Right. It's like taking everything, all the resources they have in the story, and this isn't technically true, but this is what it feels like, that they're taking all the resources they put into the story and putting it into developing products.
Right.
There are charts that I've seen, and again, whether they're accurate or not, I can't speak to, but I've seen charts being thrown around showing how many products were created in 2015, 16, 17, 18, 19, like, it's...
Yeah, but it's like when we were kids and they, took all the money out of the theater program and put it all in sports. Because sports made them more money.
It's true. So, that's one side of it. At this point, what I will say is, unless you have anything more on this particular, okay. So what I'll say here is, we love and respect you all, and I want everyone to understand that the next topic that we're going to be talking about, which I would like to be brief about, although this is us.
It's going to be tough.
Right. This talks about some heavy subjects. And I don't want people to be blindsided by that, and I want to be respectful about that. So if topics of a statutory nature are upsetting to you, if topics of which is I wouldn't even
should be
right, but I mean something that you can't handle or don't want to handle, I don't fault you. We love and respect you, and please go. Come back to the channel. This is probably, hopefully, the last time we will have to talk about this, and that's all we're talking about for the rest of this video. So thank you for coming, but please turn this off now if this is going to be upsetting to you, because it's upsetting to me,
right.
But I'm able to do it, and no one will fault you if you're not. So thanks for coming. We really appreciate it. Hashtag Vorthos Pride, all that important stuff. So take care of yourselves. Happy holidays, and go. Please feel free to pause and leave your thoughts in the comments or whatever, but otherwise, thank you. On to that topic. I genuinely feel, and this is me and me alone, I don't like mentioning Nick Kelman's name. At all. For many different reasons. I don't respect him, and I don't appreciate that he is who we have manning these stories. But, who am I? So, for me to sit here and join in with other people, and everyone has the right to their opinion. I'm not here saying that anyone is wrong for thinking, feeling, or speaking this way. But I don't feel comfortable joining in the chorus of people who are saying that Nick Kelman deserves to be fired. Because I believe it, but if the company doesn't, it's not like they don't know who he was when they hired him. Which means they wanted him for a reason. If you write, and we'll get to it, don't worry. If you don't know what I'm talking about, we'll get there. If you write a best-selling book, novel, whatever you want to call it, a bestseller, and then you're hired to do writing, or managing to do writing, the company knew what he was when they hired him. 100% they had to have known, unless they are terrible at their jobs, which I guess arguably I would not be upset with you if you felt that way.
Yeah.
Because look at the facts.
Right.
But I would argue that they knew what they were doing when they hired him. They knew who he was when they hired him. So again, this is why we gave the content warning at the top, or at the top of this discussion. If you are unaware, first of all, thank you for hearing it from us first, because there were a lot of people talking about it before us, so thank you for steering clear of it until us, I guess.
I'm sorry, I guess.
Yeah. Well, if you stuck around, please understand, but yeah, we're sorry that we have to be the ones to explain it to you. Nick Kelman is responsible for writing a book called Girls. And through reading articles about it, summaries of it, reviews of it, whatever, thank God I have not read the book itself.
Yeah.
But I guess arguably that is something to note. Neither of us have read the book ourselves. We have read articles, interviews with Kelman, and reviews or whatever of the book in many different facets.
Right.
So I doubt all of those
Unfortunately, too many different facets.
Right. But I would say take that where it comes in terms of our bias or our lack of understanding.
Right.
But I would doubt that all of those different media outlets would be lying in the same way or misrepresenting the book in the same way, and including an interview with him, which means that based on how we read that interview, they would have had to have been lying that it was him who made those statements for our opinion to be misguided.
Right.
But the book Girls, if you didn't get it from me talking about the word statutory earlier and saying that the book is titled Girls, is about adult male fantasies or stories of powerful adult men having romantic sexual encounters with young women. And
they're not women.
Thank you. Yes, fair point. Young girls. Thank you, because that's a very good point. Calling them young women gives a different connotation to it. Yes. When you have phrases like, in the description of the book, or summary of the book, of a man having sex with a young girl whose age he never learns.
Yeah.
When they're called pubescent girls.
Right.
Which someone online very accurately pointed out. They were like, well, the way that they use the word pubescent makes it seem like they mean underage. And somebody else said, well, yeah, unless girls are are reaching puberty at age 18.
Which, no.
I have a wife, I have a mother.
I have never heard of a female not already being to that point by age 18.
By 18. And again, the argument, I believe, I apologize for laughing because it's not funny, but it makes me uncomfortable, and so that's my response.
Yeah.
So I genuinely apologize if that's offensive to anyone. One of the responses was that if the girl was maybe 16 or 17, that in the country with which she was supposed to have been from, it was technically legal for her to have done that in that country.
Okay, that's like one out of all the rest of the characters, which I don't know how many there were.
And
but
also,
I don't want to know, to be honest.
And also, screw you. Because absolutely not. Like, that's, again, that may be a fair cop-out to others. I ain't buying it.
Right.
Or at least I'm not okay with it.
Right. Maybe if it was a story that was detailed about just one couple, and she's from this one place and he meets her in that one place and they end up having feelings for each other, like, there's a way that rationale could make sense. Not that it would be a story that I would ever want to read at that point.
It would still skeeve you out a little, but at least maybe there's a moral at the end somewhere, maybe?
There's a way that rationale could have made sense. This isn't one of them.
No. Because it was literally a compilation of stories, all of which were similarly themed.
They were all about that.
And if that doesn't upset you, I can't help you.
Right.
But it should.
Right.
Again, our opinion, but that's a pretty strong...
That's not really... I mean, that's a legal thing. It's not an opinion.
Yeah.
So...
And it's upsetting because he wrote that. He wrote that book and basically said, and again, this is through our readings of the interviews and the summaries, he basically said that his feeling is that all men feel this way.
Right.
What? That all men...
None I know.
Thank you. Good. That all men want to enact their power fantasies on children.
It's just gross.
It's beyond gross. It's beyond gross because it's borderline illegal. Borderline. All of well, because you're writing it and it's not actually happening.
Oh, okay.
I guess seemingly, right? Because it's written down, it's not technically happening, and you hope that it hasn't happened. But what does it say about the man who wrote it?
Right.
What does it say to you about the man who wrote it? I wouldn't necessarily.
And what does it say to younger men who, well, I mean, hopefully not nowadays, but back when it was written, maybe are a bit too impressionable to realize that that is wrong.
Or what does it say to younger women?
Yeah.
Who find this out about Nick Kelman and then find out that he's the one in charge of helping to write the magic stories for a game that they're going to be getting into or interested in. Would you want to keep playing that game? If you were a young woman, the story is being written by a man who fetishizes pedophilia?
Right.
Like, is that a fair statement? Is that an unfair statement? That's what it seems like.
Right.
That's 100% what it seems like. And we're not the first to talk about this, but God, I hope this is the last time we talk about this.
Yeah.
But I have to say, and I'm going to say it now, so that we don't have to talk about it when we get into the novel of War of the Spark Forsaken itself. War of the Spark Forsaken has a lot of sexual references in it.
Yeah. Which is not something we used to get from the Magic story.
Or if we did, it was very quick, it happened in the background, and you moved on kind of immediately, and it was
very
like
vague.
Yeah, and it was like once every like 4 or 5 stories where it was like, you know, these two people, maybe they kissed, maybe then they went off together and spent the night. Cut to the next morning. You know what I mean? Like that was your extent of sexual contact with these characters.
I don't even remember having that.
There was a line that I wrote down because the way that it was written very much upset you, and it wasn't. I didn't write it down to then further upset you again. I'm not a sadistic jerk, but it was something relating to Jace and Veraska, and it was like something about like the description of Veraska's feelings towards how Jace made love to her, and it skeeved you out a lot.
Oh, it did.
Not that it didn't skeeve me out.
I don't really remember that.
Yeah, it was. Again, I wish I knew the line. It was in the first third of the novel. But what we're getting at here is that it's very difficult to read that book as adults,
right?
Even to read that book and get to the not explicit, right? They're not talking about particular genitalia or anything like that and getting graphic, but the still exaggerated discussions of sexual contact between these characters, it's hard to read that and not have in the back of your mind that Nick Kelman is the one who okayed how this story was written.
Right.
Greg Weisman may have written all the details, but Weisman made it very clear in his apology statement that it was much more Wizards and Del Rey Books who had the final say. And I'm not comfortable reading about 13-year-old Rat getting into the shower
right.
and dropping the towel or whatever descriptions were given of her and her showering off when I know that Nick Kelman had a hand in it.
Right.
I'm sorry, but it makes me feel uncomfortable reading
Disgusting.
that, knowing the history behind the person who was in charge of that book. And again, if we're going back to JaAR speak, right, or JaAR conversation, for those of you that have watched our show long enough, I talk all the time about hating to be taken out of a story.
Right.
If I'm reading a story, I want to be immersed in that story. I want to not know that I'm sitting in a room. I want to not be aware of the uncomfortableness of the chair that I'm sitting in or the breeze coming through the window. I want to be on Ravnica with Rat and Teo and Kaya and Rahl and etc. I want to be able to...
You are on Ravnica with Rat in the shower.
Oh, God damn it. So gross.
It's okay though, Joe, because she's invisible.
It's upsetting. And again, Jason Veraska are written as adult characters. I'm still extremely uncomfortable when I read about the in-depth descriptions of the two, again, not graphic, but still in-depth of the two of them having intercourse over and over again. It's so much, and it takes me out of the story because I go, oh my God.
Because you're like, ew, Nick Kelman. All you can think about is Nick Kelman writing those words and like the gross looks on his face when he does it.
Yeah.
And oh my God, I can't.
Yeah. It's really upsetting. And I hope that that's something that other people were aware of as well, but also at the same time, I hope that it's not. I just don't want to be the only one to have put that image in everyone's head, but I'm afraid that that's kind of what we just did, but it was in ours.
At the same time.
Like, it really was. Like, both of us at the same time were like, all right.
Like, oh, no.
There was an entire chapter of just Jason Veraska having sex. And that after the whole chapter, like, we had to stop for a little while. We were like, all right, we're taking a break.
Yeah, we can't do this anymore.
What the hell are you supposed to do after that? We weren't comfortable. So why is that okay? Why is that the novel that you put forth? But it's because the company hired this man, again, having to have known who he was and what he had done, what he had written.
Oh my God, just like, just thinking about the fact that they knew that makes my stomach churn.
It should. It sucks that it does, but it damn well should. Usually, there's like a wrap-up to this. I don't know how to wrap this up.
Right.
I wanted to talk about it here, like I said, because when we go to review the story, I want to be able to review the story.
Right.
And not talk about, well, there was an entire chapter of Jason Veraska having sex, and Nick Kelman's disgusting, so thanks. Right. It's true, but I sure as hell don't want to talk about it during a full actual review, because again, if people aren't aware at that time, I would feel like, for me personally, that I would have to put a content warning on that. I shouldn't have to do that when talking about the magic story.
Yeah.
I shouldn't. It sucks. And yet, this is the world that we live in. And following the debacle with the Chandra and Nissa queer baiting, I guess, is the best way to put that. And then the subsequent apologies from both parties, Wizards and Weissman. Nick Kelman's name was never mentioned. So it seems like Wizards is just as much afraid to say his name as I am, but they're the ones paying him. Right. They're the ones that hired him. And they're the ones who still have him on the payroll. Despite the fact that the overwhelming response from people has been to ask for him to be fired.
Right.
Some have more demanded than asked.
Right.
But, and again, I'm not comfortable being one of those people because they knew what they were doing when they hired him. Mm-hmm. And they knew what they were doing when they fired their in-house story team. Mm-hmm. And or made others feel that it was time for them to leave. And so, this is where we are. As of the recording of this video, as of us sitting here talking about this, there is no Theros Beyond Death story. Just none. And what I thought was super interesting was somebody made the comment, and again, it's a comedic thing, but you laugh about it because it sucks so much.
Right.
One of the things that Wizard said in its apology following the War of the Spark Forsaken debacle was, we promise to do better in the future.
Sure you do.
Well, it's not even about that. In what future?
Right.
There is no...
eliminated it.
Yeah. There currently is no future. And again, if you're going to turn around in a week and go, hey, there's this new thing, check it out. No. Like, we will, don't get me wrong, but just
We're
no.
so tired of it.
Just stop doing it. And not stop making the stories. Stop, like, stringing us all along. I was trying to think of the right words. That's absolutely it. Stop stringing everybody along. Be accountable.
Right.
Stop throwing secret layers and theme boosters and collector's boosters and previews at us because you think that it's going to make us forget that you took the entirety of the Vorthos community and just crumbled us up like an old piece of paper and threw us to the side.
Right.
Like, oh, they're upset about the last story that we wrote, but it was the only thing that was making us money. And they don't like the ebooks even though they're $4, so we can't do that anymore either. What will we do? How about just nothing? Oh, that's a good idea. You mean we won't have to pay outside authors? We won't have to have somebody look over their work over and over again? Sure. Let's get rid of them. And again...
You know, I wish I could say that I didn't say I told you so, but I certainly did.
And again...
It literally felt like they were on purpose alienating the entirety of the Vorthos community just to make things easier for themselves.
I believe you said that during the Future of the Magic Story discussion, the review of the weekly MTG story, which was a long-ass time ago. And we both, I'll say I in this case, but I believe it was both of us, in our communication in the Magic community or the Vorthos community, when we made that video, we talked about the issues. That was like, a year ago, 2 years ago that we made that video? It had to have been over a year ago. It was in our old apartment. We moved over a year ago to this one. So, and we made both of those videos in the old apartment, on the old set. But here we are, talking about it again, over a year later, and nothing's better, and as Amy said, it's probably just worse.
Yeah. No, it's like noticeably worse.
Yeah. So, what I will leave you with, so that there's maybe a bit of a smile that can creep up on your mouths, because I don't like having these videos be like, everything's garbage, bye. Like, that's not fair to all of you, because again, this is supposed to be a bit of an escape.
Right.
So first of all, if you stuck it out...
It's supposed to be a nice thing, regardless of the fact that Wizard seems to not feel that way.
Right. So, if you stuck it out this long, first of all, props, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hopefully it wasn't too much. Please let us know any and all thoughts in the comments down below. I don't even know what to say in terms of, like, how to cater your responses. Like, be aware that there was a content warning on this video halfway through. So, if you're going to post, like, super upsetting things for discussion purposes, please maybe put something at the top as well. This may be after you've already done it. I don't know what to tell you. I'm not going to block any comments or anything, but you know, it's a tough discussion, and I don't know how to facilitate it. But that's what this show is supposed to facilitate discussion, and I want everybody to be able to do that. So if you have thoughts, I would love for you to leave them in the comments. Just be aware that it was a bit of a heavier subject. So if it's something that you can slightly censor a bit, for the sake of your fellow reader or viewer, please do so, just to make everybody feel more comfortable and safe. That's the only thing I can think of to say, and even then it might not be great. If you have an opinion that you need to get out there, just get it out. I'd rather be able to read it and hope that, you know, maybe, hopefully someone will start reading it, realize what it is, and move on in the worst case scenario. But here's the positive that I want to leave it on. Next week, as I said, we are back with our year-end wrap-up.
Yes.
We're going to talk about everything that happened this year, talk about what we're planning on doing in the future. Please stay tuned for that. I think we may just put that on all of our channels all at once, just because we want everybody to be able to hear it. Because it's important to us. It's going to be entirely positive. We just want to, let everybody know what's going on.
Right.
It's the end of the year, or it's going to be the end of the year, and we're looking forward to it. We hope that all of you have a happy holidays and a happy new year as well. Thank you all so much, as always, for watching. We will be back in the new year with at least part 1 of War of the Spark Forsaken. I'd like for it to be part 1, then part 2, then part 3 week after week, but I also, as always, want to give it the time that it deserves to read it and to review it. So stay tuned for that. After that, obviously, we will move on to the Wildered Quest. That is not necessarily, or even certainly immediately after, but that will be those will be the next few JaARs. Again, barring them making some gotcha announcement for Theros Beyond Death, which we cannot be prepared for in any way. So we will. That's our plan currently. If that changes, you'll be the first to know. Feel free to check the description to check out our other channels, but also find us on Facebook and Twitter. That's where we would be making those kinds of announcements, as opposed to just making a full video for it and putting it out there as like a weekly release of some kind, because that's not accurate or fair enough. So, anything else to close this one out?
No, I think we've said too much already.
I agree. This one sucked, and I apologize, but I hope that if it needs to facilitate discussion, that it will. And I hope that as we get into this tougher time and tougher experience, people always remember that we still care enough, and we hope you do too, to come here, talk to all of you, and with all of you, to show off our...
#Forthos Pride.
It's important. We still have it, and it's not going away anytime soon. If we have to tap out at some point, we'll let you know, but I don't see it coming anytime soon. I mean, it seems like they're going to end it before we do, so...
Well...
But...
Seems like they already have.
Yeah. Feel free to check out all our other stuff. Like we said, it helps us out a lot. If you really like what we do, we appreciate it so much. So please feel free. There's things that'll be popping up all over the screen. Sorry, I pointed at the tree, but it's more here. No, it's more here. Is where the subscription buttons will be, videos all around us, whatever. So yes, thank you all so very much for watching. This has been another episode of JaAR here on Geek for All. I have been Joe.
And I'm Amy.
And as we always say, in whichever video of ours you watch next, we will see you all next time. Thanks, everybody.